Small grains collection is basically, I guess, what USDA calls small grains: wheat, barley, oat, rye, triticale, and rice. So we have those crops. The rice is a bit of an anomaly, but it's a small grain. All of the work is done in Arkansas for that crop, but we store and distribute the rice collection from here. Triticale is a man-made crop. It's a cross between wheat and rye. So wheat, the genus is Triticum. Rye, the genus is Aegilops. So when you put the two together, it becomes the hybrid name Triticale. So that's the name Triticale. Triticale has some traits of both crops. Triticale generally has more winter hardiness. If you're looking at a winter habit type, it can produce some very high yields. It has large spikes, and it's good for animal feed more than anything else. Rye is an old crop, grown quite a bit in Europe. Rye, of course, can be used in bread making. It's also used, I think, in distilling. It can be grazed for animals. It's just interesting. If you go visit a rye breeding company in Europe, they often use tents. They will actually cover the whole row with a cloth tent to prevent outcrossing. We have tried that a couple of times, but the conditions here in Idaho are such that the next day it would all be blown off and across the field somewhere. We have way too much wind around here to deal with that. The oat collection of cultivated oats, there's around 10,000 accessions that we grow out. And of course, oat is a human food and an animal feed. Historically, it was a very big crop in the United States, especially in the horse-drawn era. But today, it's a much smaller crop commercially. Oats grow really well here in Idaho and are high yielding. A lot of them look the same, but there are some distinct differences in terms of sizes and shapes of the panicles. There's a hulled type and there's also a hulless type. There are two types of oats, one that threshes free and one that does not thresh free. Barley is a diploid crop, so its genetics are not so difficult, and these have all been studied extensively. There is feed, food, beer. Those are the three things for barley. The barley collection is almost 30,000 accessions in total. And it includes cultivars, breeding lines, land races, and some genetic stocks. Pretty diverse materials. You end up with colors, shapes, and size differences. You have the same thing with awns or beards, whether they're awns or awnless, or sometimes awnletted, short types. Sometimes the awn can be replaced with a structure that's called a hood. This is what's called a hooded barley. The hooded type in commercial use has been used for a hay barley because it replaces the beard with this structure which cattle can eat. Another important trait is row number, spike row number. Basically, there's a 6-row type and a 2-row type. We're looking here at 6-row. Basically, if you take each spikelet and just dissect this head, this spike, it will break off into groups of 3 kernels. But if you go around the spike, it would be a total of 6. That's why it's called a 6-row. A 2-row, the lateral florets are rudimentary. So instead of 6 rows around, you only have 2 that are fertile. So you end up with only 2 rows, basically on opposite sides of the spike as you go up and down the spike. In a 6-row, you see there's 6 if you count them around versus 2. It's an accession that we call a many-noded dwarf. It's a mutant. If you notice, it's very dense and compact. There's many nodes in here, but they're all very, very close together. And there was a scientist named Harry Harlan who studied a lot of these materials right here at Aberdeen back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Characterized a lot of these things. The hexaploid wheat, Triticum aestivum, is the bread wheat. It's used for bread, cakes, cookies, all kinds of baking products. Within bread wheat, you have classes, what are called market classes. You have spring markets, you have winter markets, and you have colors within those. So you have red and you have white. And you have hardness, you have soft, and you have hard. So for example, in this area, we can grow pretty much any class of wheat. But it could be a hard red winter, which means it's good for bread making, planted in the fall, goes through the winter season. It could be a hard red spring, which means it's good for bread making, but it's planted in the spring. It could be a soft red or soft white winter wheat, which is good for cakes and cookies. That could be either a spring or a winter habit. There is a class of wheat grown in the Pacific Northwest called the club wheat. It's a very short and dense spike. It's probably a soft white winter class, which would mean cakes and cookies. The durum wheat, which is a tetraploid wheat, is the so-called pasta wheat or macaroni wheat. 90% of the time you can tell bread wheat from durum wheat, but there's that other 10% where they're confounding, and the only way to really tell is to analyze the chromosomes. And so we use a ploidy flow cytometry, ploidy analysis to determine that. Most taxonomists consider Aegilops to be its own genus. So it's a relative of triticum, a relative of wheat, and can be utilized in wide crosses to introduce usually specific genes, maybe for an insect or disease resistance. That's it's been most commonly used for. But as I mentioned, there's something called a synthetic hexaploid wheat. Hexaploid wheat has the genomes of A, B, and D. Durum wheat, if you go back to the tetraploid type, is genomes A and B. Aegilops tauschii is the D genome and is considered to be the donor of the D genome in wheat. So you can manipulate the two, make crosses, and end up with ABD synthetic hexaploid wheat. And using the diversity in tauschii, using the diversity in durum, or actually you're talking about the 4X wheats, the tetraploid wheats, which includes a pretty wide group of materials. You can make crosses, create synthetic hexaploids, which potentially have more diversity in them for selection and improvement of wheat than the original bread wheat or the aestivum types, which went through some bottlenecks.